We're investigating the Gunner mercenary faction in Fallout 4. It would be a huge oversight if I forgot to talk about MacCready. MacCready was a former gunner, and we can get to know him better than any other gunner or former gunner in the game. He's a great source of information about the gunners, but he doesn't give it up freely. You have to get to know the man. MacCready has a personal affiliation quest called Long Road Ahead. There are two main parts to the quest. The first part is to take care of some gunner mercenaries that had been harassing MacCready. I'll be sure to cover that in an upcoming video. The second part brings us to the Med-Tek research building in the Malden area of Boston. The reason we come here with MacCready is because his son is sick. We come here looking for the only cure that can save him. In today's video, we will fully explore the Med-Tek research building and focus on the building's pre-war history. Upon arrival, we get attacked by feral ghouls wandering around outside the door.
Med-Tek research. I hope Sinclair's information pays off. Let's head inside and grab that cure.
The building has a modest-sized parking garage just outside. Upon entering to the left, we find a weapons workbench and a place to rest. This may come in handy if you're playing on survival. On the top floor of the garage, we get a good view of the Med-Tek research sign, and we find a dead raider next to some feral ghouls. That's about everything we find outside. For the rest, we must go in.
All right, let's find that executive terminal. Sinclair said that's the only way we can override the facility's lockdown.
We're looking for the executive terminal. The reception terminal here in the lobby doesn't give us any interesting information. All we get is an entry that says that the entire building is on a containment lockdown. We don't know why the place is locked down. Maybe we'll find out later. The alert instructs security staff to maintain site integrity and to use deadly force if necessary. I guess all of the scientists that were working here were forced to stay and forbidden to leave on pain of death. To the east, we find a novice-locked door. Inside, we find a couple of ammo crates and the security terminal. I'm not sure why this exists because it has the exact same information as the reception terminal. Heading west, we find a lot of chems lying about, and south we find the bathrooms. One of the toilets is in a closed room. Maybe it was a storage room, but we find the skeleton of a man with his head in the toilet bowl. It looks like he died vomiting into this toilet. Maybe he ultimately succumbed to radiation poisoning, and up until the moment he died, he was frightfully sick. Maybe the radiation poisoning caused him to vomit his guts out. Heading back out the bathroom, we find two large windows looking into a hallway lined with radiation decontamination arches. The quest marker points us into this room. However, if you access the airlock terminal and try to open the doors, you get an error message. It says access denied. We have to turn off the security lockdown before we can access this terminal. Now, the elevator in the lobby is non-functional, so our only way forward is through a door next to the airlock. Heading forward, we find our first ghoul. In the next room, we find two bathrooms to the right. In the men's restroom, we find another skeleton on the floor. Not sure why we're finding so many skeletons in the toilets. And then you can access the women's bathroom through a hole in the wall. In one of the toilets in the women's bathroom, we find something strange that I really can't explain. Maybe you can figure it out for me. We find an 11 ball next to a 9 ball separated by a ladle. This seems very specific. Is this some pop culture reference that I don't understand? 11 ladle 9? 11 9 ladle? 9/11 ladle? It might be a reference to 9/11. However, if that's the case, the balls are actually in the wrong order, and it doesn't explain the ladle. So I have no explanation for this. If you do, let me know in the comments. Out of the bathrooms and up the stairs, we reach floor number 2. This leads out to an office area where the pen pushers did their research at their computer desks. On the floor above us, we find a bunch of ghouls walking around. We can lure them down with a few shots to take care of them on this floor. The door on this floor leads to a platform that connects to the inaccessible elevator. Back inside the office room, we find a ramp made from the collapsed floor above us that we can use to access the 3rd floor. Once up top, we can take care of the remaining ghouls. And there are more in the first room to the right.
You hear that? Two things around here.
Here we find some minor chems and a Nuka-Cola Quantum on the table, and that's about it. Continuing along, we can pass through a door that leads to a balcony overlooking the lobby, that then leads to a door which takes us to a secretary's reception area. The door behind the secretary's desk leads to the executive's office, where you can take care of the ghouls inside. Since this building was on lockdown, we can only assume that the ghouls we just killed used to be the chief executives of this corporation. As we get close to the terminal, MacReady gives us the password that he got from Sinclair.
Check the terminal on the desk over there. Sinclair's passcode better work, or we're screwed.
From this terminal, we can choose the alert override option to turn off the containment lockdown.
Thank God that worked. Let's find our way down to the sublevel. That's where Med-Tek should be storing the cure.
But there are a few interesting lore entries in this terminal. The first is the sales report summary. Med-Tek was a researcher, producer, and retailer of chems. Product sales are great, and they reveal the sales strategy for this company. Their sales of Mentats are up 24% in school districts. That's right, it looks like Med-Tek is trying to peddle this particular chem to high school students. Remember, when I did my video on the Suffolk County Charter School, the principal of that school had a hooligan sell Mentats to the other students in an effort to raise the school's test scores. Looks like Suffolk County Charter School was not the only school whose students used this drug to make them smarter to get better grades. And the next entry is interesting. It says that their sales of the Fixer drug are up 12% in seeded zones. There's a whole lot here. First, what the heck is Fixer? Well, Fixer is a drug that we find in Fallout New Vegas, and it does pretty much the exact same thing as Addictol in Fallout 4. Now, why Bethesda chose to create a brand new drug, Addictol, which does not appear in Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas, I do not know, especially since they already had a drug in the Fallout universe that did the exact same thing called Fixer. The only major difference between Addictol and Fixer is that Fixer gave you kind of a little woozy, drunken after effect, while Addictol doesn't. But another interesting thing about this is that it shows that Fallout New Vegas is indeed canon. Bethesda published Fallout New Vegas. They didn't develop Fallout New Vegas, but it's clearly part of the same world. New Vegas is still considered canon, and this terminal proves it. The next interesting thing about this is that it says that sales are up in seeded zones. What I think it means is that this company seeded free chems in specific areas of the town with the goal of getting people addicted. Then they can sell their drug Fixer to get them off of the drugs. Oldest trick in the book. Give them the drugs for free, get them addicted, and then hike up the price of those drugs after they need it, or use their addiction to sell them the cure. Next on the terminal are sales forecasts for a new product that they are developing called Prevent. They project a 250% increase of Prevent sales by 2078. They expect those sales to increase even further, rising up to 330% by 2079. What is Prevent? Well, it's likely the drug that we're here to get from MacReady. And based on the name of the drug and the other chems that this company produced, I believe that Prevent was probably a drug that Med-Tek had developed to help prevent people from getting addicted or suffering the negative consequences of using chems. If this is the case, what a racket! They could use the media and commercials to whip up people into a frenzy. Parents, you don't want your kids to get addicted to chems. You can prevent it by giving them Prevent. Give your kids Prevent with their cereal in the morning. Give your kids Prevent in their packed lunches. And give your kids Prevent when they come home for dinner. You want to be a good parent, don't you? Good parents prevent their kids from getting addicted. Not only do they manufacture and sell the addicting chem, and not only do they manufacture and sell the cure to that addiction, but now they manufacture and sell something to prevent the addiction from ever occurring in the first place. Diabolical. The next entry is called the Research Report Summary, and here we learn that Med-Tek was testing the development of their new chems on human subjects. One experiment caused hair loss. Another experiment caused the adult test subjects to form cysts. If they had to specify that this only happened to the adult test subjects, does this mean that they had child test subjects? And in the final experiment, it says that test subjects were reporting erections that were lasting more than 4 hours. Yes, I can see why that would be awkward. But the last one is the most devious. It says test subject procurement costs up 36%. How did they procure their test subjects? Surely the test subjects must have been volunteers. What did they spend all that money on? Marketing? Or were they bribing government officials to hand over, say, inmates? Once this room is explored, we can hop down through a hole in the floor to loot an otherwise inaccessible room below, which just has a tidy stash of chems. But in this room, we can take another hole in the floor down to reach the bathrooms, and from here we can go back to the airlock and use the terminal to open the airlock doors. Using the reception desk terminal, we can unlock the security doors on this level. This releases a slew of ghouls. We can go through each of these rooms, clearing it of all of the feral ghouls. Going through the first room on the left, we can loot it of its valuable chems. The first door on the right is another lab with more chems inside, and then you can pass through the hole in the wall to reach the nearby bathroom. Here we find a skeleton on the floor and a door that leads to a stairway that can bring us up to the next level. There are two ways to gain access to this floor. We can take a ramp formed by the broken floor to the left or take the stairway to the right. Going up the stairway, we find ourselves in what looks to be like a reactor room. The Geiger counter on our Pip-Boy picks up trace amounts of radiation coming from the reactor. It's not a whole lot. I was able to go through this entire thing without needing a hazmat suit, but it did pick it up. Going through the next door, we can kill a few more ghouls. In here, we find some closed off rooms. The doors are security gates, and so they are locked. We can use the nearby novice-locked terminals to open up each one, but inside we don't really find anything. Just a bed and a drain. Well, what could these be for? Well, at the end of this lab are two more rooms, but each of these has a feral ghoul inside. If there are feral ghouls in these cells, it means that at one time these must have been just regular people. Why did this company have people in cells? But then we think back to the terminal entry where we learned about the test subjects. Could these people in these cells have been the test subjects? And if so, why were they in cells? Does this mean that the test subjects were involuntary? Maybe they really did have some sort of under-the-table arrangement with insane asylums or prisons to get inmates. Or maybe they had their own KGB-like squad that they sent to the streets of Boston to round up homeless people or addicts suffering from addictions to the very drugs that Med-Tek created. The devious possibilities here are endless. The only way forward is to take the nearby elevator. This brings us down to the sublevel.
Ugh, smells horrible. I think we're the first ones down here in a long time. The sooner we find that cure, the sooner we can get the heck out of here.
We then move forward to explore this sublevel that has not been seen by human eyes in over 200 years. To the left, we find a crushed skeleton in a lab coat. Looks like due to the lockdown, none of these scientists escaped with their lives. But this is a dead end, so instead we head south and through the door on the left. Here we find ceiling-mounted turrets attacking a ghoul. It looks like there was a glitch. The ghoul is half sticking out of its door. But how do we open the door? At the top of this floor, we find more holding cells. And most disturbingly, on one of the carts in the hallway, we find a pair of handcuffs. Is this concrete evidence that Med-Tek was holding people here against their will, experimenting on involuntary test subjects? It's starting to look that way. I suppose one could argue that they used the handcuffs to restrain people who were having a negative reaction to some of the chems that they were being tested with. But you don't use handcuffs to restrain a test subject, because you can injure yourself trying to get out of handcuffs. No, to properly restrain a test subject or a person who has lost his mind, you use a straitjacket. No, I think these handcuffs are more evidence that these people were kept against their will by force. We get more evidence of this when we head to the end of this room to access the Med-Tek Cellblock Terminal. From this terminal, we can unlock all of the security doors to all of these holding cells. But before we explore the cells, we can turn around and unlock the security gate, where we find a whole lot of loot. Ammunition, 10mm pistols, a basket filled with handcuffs, and a security helmet. Why would security officers need a helmet, handcuffs, and 10mm pistols if the test subjects were not held here involuntarily? No, these people were not just test subjects. These people were prisoners. After unlocking the door to the cells, more ghouls come and attack you from the floor below. After exploring the cells, you can try to use the stairway to get to the floor below, but you find that it's blocked. The ceiling has caved in. To get down, go inside the most southwesternly cell where we find a hole in the floor. As soon as we arrive, we find even more ghouls to kill.
You'll ever make.
How many test subjects did they have imprisoned in this facility? Or were these all scientists? To the right, we can loot a fusion core, and heading up the steps, we can go into an office room where we find a novice locked safe. In the back of this room, we find a skeleton dangling from the ceiling, likely crushed when the bombs fell. There are large pipes that block access to the rest of this floor, but from this upper level we can hop on down behind the pipes to find the skeleton of a scientist next to a first aid kit and a toolbox, each with randomized loot. Going out of this room and through the door to continue forward, we come out to the top of a stairway and turn right to find some refrigerators. Inside we find 2 teddy bears. What are they doing? Are they hugging? Is this a mommy teddy bear throwing a baby teddy bear into the air? Or are these 2 teddy bears locked in some sort of passionate embrace? Well, that's slightly rather disturbing. Let's just ignore this and keep going. Down the stairs, we can kill a ghoul hiding underneath them. We can go 2 ways, but this is a big loop, so it doesn't matter which way you go. If you go down the left path, we find 2 garbage bins. If you open one of them and peer inside, you just see garbage as normal. But if you open up the other and peer inside, we find it filled with human bones. This was clearly placed here specifically for this instance. You can compare the 2 garbage dumpsters and they are different. One just has garbage, but the other is filled with bones. I'm not talking about the menu. Look inside the garbage can. Human bones. What does this mean? Well, if we go all the way to the end of this hallway, we come around to a Med-Tek lab terminal attached to a security door. Using it, we can turn off the turrets and unlock the security door and fight the ghouls within, one of which is a glowing one.
Safety off. Now it's just starting to have fun.
This final room completes the story. On a desk in the middle of the table, we find human bones splayed out. In boxes on one of the nearby desks, we find a bunch of clothing and handcuffs. We can loot some chems on the nearby table, and we can loot the end of dungeon steamer trunk. But as we explore the room, it just gets darker and darker. Each of these refrigerators is filled with human bones. Note that these are not randomly placed by the game. Typically, when you loot a container, the game does a calculation based on your perks and your level, and it'll fill that container with stuff. But no, that's not the same kind of container. These were manually placed by the developers. Each of these refrigerators is filled to the brim with bones, 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 more bones. On the table in the middle, we find 2 complete human skeletons with more handcuffs, a bone saw, and lots of surgical equipment. On the table with the blasted out terminal, we find a copy of the Massachusetts Surgical Journal raised by robots. Can robots have maternal instincts? Which permanently inflicts 2% limb damage to enemies. And on the other side of the operating table, next to a hacksaw of all things, we find Prevent. This is the drug that MacReady needs to cure his son. I think it's clear what went on here. These savages were testing their experimental chems on involuntary test subjects. Maybe they were prison inmates, maybe they had been in an insane asylum, maybe they were rounded up off the street and were the homeless or drug addicts. Whomever they were incarcerated against their will, locked up in cells and placed in handcuffs. And either in the due course of the experimentation or when things went wrong, these people were killed. Their bodies were placed on insanitary tables, and they were butchered. Their body parts were put in refrigerators to keep fresh, probably to save for resale later to people needing organ or limb transplants. And those that went off were tossed in the dumpster. What we see in this facility raises some serious ethical dilemmas, because obviously this is horrible, and yet on the other hand, the chems they produce are magic. The only reason we are here is because this company, by kidnapping and murdering people and using them as test subjects, created something that can cure MacReady's son. And this is a major theme in Fallout. Yes, it was horrible that the Vault 81 scientists were using the inhabitants of Vault 81 for their experiments, but they did end up creating the drug to cure all sicknesses. How far are we willing to go with the whole "the ends justifies the means" argument? Are we willing to go as far as kidnapping people, murdering them, packing up their clothing and their jewelry, and selling them at pawn shops to make a little bit of profit? Which all goes back into the research, of course. Saving their limbs and organs to sell to hospitals for organ transplants, the profits of which, hey, they all go back to research. And snuffing out countless lives to do test upon test upon test. And ultimately to succeed, to produce Prevent, which cures children of blue boils, to produce Fixer, which successfully gets people off of their addictions. I think many are willing to go that far, and I think these are more likely to be comfortable with what the Institute does. But as for me, I think that there is definitely an ethical line that mankind should not cross, no matter what good comes from it, no matter what amazing piece of science we produce, no matter what magic we turn into reality. When science butts heads with individual liberty and the human freedom to just live a normal life, that's where I side with human liberty every time. Instead of thinking about people as disposable assets to be used to further science, I think we should think about science as an asset to be used to further people, to give people greater health and happiness, but never at the expense of individual liberty. Once done, we can give Prevent to MacCready to finish the quest, but I'm going to save that footage for another video dedicated to that quest, where I'm going to go into the topic in full detail. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the full story of the Med-Tek research facility in the Malden area of Boston in Fallout 4. I'm methodically going through as much gunner-related information as I possibly can while trying to uncover the mysteries of the gunners. Never fear, ladies and gentlemen, we will get to MacCready and his entire story soon. We will go through many more gunner locations before ending with a final gunner lore video. If you're interested in that content, be sure to subscribe and click that notification bell to get notified when I publish a new video. What are your thoughts on Med-Tek? Do you think their methods are somehow excusable? If so, let me know in the comments section below. I read all of your comments and I use them as inspiration for my future videos. And if you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. Patreon subscribers get access to a private channel on my Discord server, as well as a bunch of other cool Oxhorn perks. But more than anything, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just so glad that you're here watching this video today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with a brand new video.